I remember when Garchomp was banned from Generation 4 OU. We had just buried Caesar, and Platinum was about to come out in Japan. So it was the fall of 2008. And people were freaking out because Garchomp is, of course, an iconic Generation 4 Pokemon, and they wanted to use it. How am I going to use Garchomp if I can't use it in OU? Is it even any good in Ubers? Well, as it turned out, Garchomp was already known to be excellent in Ubers and had been seeing use already, even when it was still an OU Pokemon. And years later, it is still one of the best of the best. In fact, I believe that pretty much everyone considers it, great or even elite, but I still somehow feel like it's underrated. It's tough to put my finger on exactly why, but I'm making a video about it, so that speaks for itself. I guess it's a combination of, I just think we should be seeing it used more, and it also has some unexplored options, or relatively unexplored options, but in general, I just don't think it gets used enough for how good it is, or at least how good I think it is. And I realize that Garchomp is kind of tough to fit on a team if you're trying to justify everything. Like, if you're not building around Garchomp, then it's not something you would necessarily slap on. And that makes sense, because even like an offensive powerhouse like Latios, then that has the concrete defensive utility of switching into Kyogre, and generally having that great Earthquake immunity. So in this vein, Garchomp is more like a Darkrai or a Mewtwo that doesn't directly switch into a lot of stuff, but has so much offensive presence that it's just worth giving a try. Or worth using, sorry, not worth giving a try. Sorry, I'm trying to think of my next, 16 sentences at the same time. Alright, so, number one, Garchomp has more defensive utility than I think people give it credit for. And but it's still not switching into a lot, but it, again, is switching into more than you'd think. Requires some good prediction, but it's nothing unreasonable, I think. And in a bang-bang metagame like Ubers, I feel like in Ubers, people are often afraid to switch because... and they'll just kind of sacrifice stuff just because the Draco Meteors flying around are so strong. So you definitely need to be good with your pivoting, both getting Garchomp in and having something to pivot out of when you switch Garchomp out of the Latios. So it definitely requires a good backbone around it, or screaming offensive pressure from every direction, because it isn't exactly checking much. But it is checking a lot. And furthermore, I believe that it is more difficult to stop with traditional offensive stuff than Darkrai and Mewtwo, because it's not vulnerable to things like Lucario Extreme Speed, Scissor Bullet Punch, Giratina Shadow Sneak. That's really big. Darkrai doesn't mind Shadow Sneak, obviously, but Mewtwo does. So that's a big one. And that speed and those stabs, I mean, it's just terrific. So, this is going to be it's going to be a lot of things. One, what sets does Garchomp already use? What sets could it be using? And what partners does it have? Or what setups can it potentially work on? I mean, these are not unknown qualities, but I would like to see more Garchomp. So I want to, plant the seeds of ideas in people's brains. Oh, I never thought about pairing Garchomp with Skarmory before. That's not a good example because that's been done a lot, but yeah. So before we go on, I just want to mention specifically... Okay, so let me give you a comparison. Latios is a massive threat. Mewtwo is a massive threat. Darkrai is a massive threat, yeah. But they do not have the same potential that Garchomp does to clean up a team. Whether it's with Scarf or the Salix set, just because they don't have the same. Well, they're not running Scarf, first of all, and they don't really have speed boost. I mean, Dragon Dance Latios is very rare, so their ability to cleave past the ever-present Scarfers in the tier is not comparable to Garchomp's at all. And a lot of teams are just... Actually, most teams are cleaved over by Garchomp, and even those that are prepared for Chomp more naturally than others are still very vulnerable because Garchomp, of course, has teammates. So the basic premise of why Garchomp is so vicious is that the Pokemon that are faster and outspeed and KO it, like Latios and Mewtwo and whatever, those aren't the Pokemon that switch in. The one exception is Lugia, who has been on a severe decline, but more on that later. So if you're faster, you're not switching into Garchomp safely. And this is in contrast to something like Scarf Jirachi, which switches into all three of the Lati Twin, I guess all four, of the two Lati Twins, Darkrai, and Mewtwo. One example, but that's the basic idea. And the things that are slower are, yes, something like Groudon can take hits, but that's where Garchomp's boosting options come in, because it has Swords Dance and it's got good natural bulk. Like compare it again to those three, the fast pokes, and throw in Skyman if you feel like it. Those pokes faster than Garchomp, which are very few by the way, naturally faster anyway, because Scarfers are exploitable. And the whole speed thing comes back to Scarfers, but we'll get to that. So the Pokemon faster than Garchomp are far more frail, and we've already mentioned that they're more vulnerable to priority than Chomp. But they're more frail in general. I mean, Latios, and they're all vulnerable to something like Thunder Wave from Groudon. So they get paralyzed and they get smacked real hard. I mean, Latios drops a Dragon Claw, Darkrai and Mewtwo don't like EQs. Whereas the Pokemon coming in to handle Garchomp, the physical wall being Groudon, means that, Swords Dance and Groudon's going to get ripped right open. So the boosting option for anything slower, even things like Skarmory and Bronzong aren't necessarily safe. And again, teammates make it so that Garchomp doesn't even have to pack coverage for them. I think that without Garchomp around, we would never see Magnezone and Ubers. The two Pokemon that resist, besides Shedinja, which is garbage, the two Pokemon that can take Garchomp's stab combination are Bronzong and Skarmory, and that pretty much entirely justifies Magnezone's existence in Ubers, because Garchomp is just that threatening. And it also traps Dialga sometimes, but it's really just for justifying Garchomp. If you're running a Magnezone team, it's because you're facilitating Garchomp. And facilitating things like Latios is nice too, but it's mainly so you just unleash those stabs with Chomp. Because, something like Latios can thunder its way through Zong, and, other steals are going to get ripped, like Jirachi, are going to get torn apart by spikes. So you can beat those down too. Not the same thing with Chomp, but you zone it. Not that it necessarily needs zone, because something like a Sunny Firefang or a Rainy Aqua Tail are going to rip through them too. But again, these are the options you have. And again, Zong and Skarm are, they're not specific, they're quite common. But a lot of the Uber tier is offense, and Garchomp is an offensive behemoth that rips through other offense. And it's not nearly, as we've already established 60 million times, it's not nearly as prone to priority counterattacks as most fast Pokemon. The faster pokes, your Latis, your Darkrai, your Mewtwo, even Skyman, those are way more physically frail. And so Garchomp's combination of muscle, speed, and bulk is really, really valuable. So, before we go on to the sets, then I just want to give an example. I'm going to use my own videos for this. So from the DPP Ubers 6 tournament battles thing, we're just going to skim the games that were played and just look at the teams on both sides. So, oh good lord, I do take a while, don't I? Alright, so let's check this out. Tina O, Palkia, Heatran on Jackie's side. Yeah, oh, that's an ad. Alright, so while the ad plays, then we're just going to look at the other video I have for this, my 7 UPL 2021 battles. So look at my teams that I brought. So even the ones that are as fast-paced as possible, even they are going to... Look, Garchomp is not a Pokemon you counter with offense. You could make a case for every single Ubers team being Garchomp weak, which is unique, because even something like Kyogre... technically every team is vulnerable to, like, Kyogre and Pursuit or something. But, Kyogre is also a lot more... It's a lot slower, it's vulnerable to being attacked... Its Stealth Rock neutrality holds it back a lot of the time. Garchomp resists Stealth Rock, doesn't need as much support to be instantly threatening to the widest variety of teams. because it's a lot harder to. It's pretty easy to naturally pack a Kyogre check, right? Because the Lottie twins and Palkia are such great Pokemon already. And with Garchomp, then when you're throwing on Ubers, then you're throwing on a lot of Dragon types, a lot of physically frail Pokemon like Darkrai and Mewtwo, and the one physically defensive Pokemon, Groudon. Then that's not really going to stand up to Garchomp super well either. I mean, even Dragonclaw, even if you're not having Chomp, just kind of bounces off. So, anyway, now back to this game. So, let's check this out. So, both of these teams are like balanced with the fast option. So, again, look, the wall, Groudon can't switch in. I mean, even Stall Mewtwo isn't exactly a good, with Defense EVs and Ice Beam and Will-O-Wisp and such. It's a pretty good, like, pseudo-Lugia, but it's still not a good Chomp switch in. So, yeah, that's... Okay, so now we have the pause thing out of the way. Let's look at Jackie's team. Tina O, Palkia, Heatran, Darkrai, Fori, Groudon. I mean, that's not something a Scarf Chomp would love to switch into, or to go one-on-one with, because there's, like, lots of Protect and Bulk, but... late game, then it still poses a threat because EQ hits literally everything except Tina O. So, with spikes down, then it is a... Oh, let me go back. So yeah, EQ threatens everything except Tina O. And same for FC's team. And both ground immunes on these... that's another thing. I mean, I said the Dragon Stab first because... Oh, I just full screened. I don't know if that showed on the camera thing. But, yeah, so we just said for the Dragon Stab, that's Chomp's most spammable because only resisted by steals, and there's a lot of Dragon Weaks. But its EQ is similarly threatening because what do people use to handle Dragon? Just like we said, Steel. And the ground immunes, the EQ immunes in Ubers are vulnerable to the Dragon moves. So here you see a perfect example. Tina O and, Latias. So yeah, Chomp massively threatening to both these teams, even though they're bulky. And the best thing is, it does it with pretty much any set. I mean, in fact, Scarf, the set people slap on the most is Scarf, and that's still threatening just by virtue of EQ spamming with hazards down. But something like any non-choice Chomp is also vicious against these kinds of teams, and I mean pretty much every kind of team. So that goes to both teams you see here. Now, just so we don't keep doing this over and over and over, then we're just going to, Spark Notes it. And there's another ad. I wonder why I put all these ads in these videos. You don't have to. You already know. Anyway, well, Windows. Oh, I just full screen again. So... the short version is, okay, so see, there's a Rain Bronzong on Cole's team here, and even that, it's not just Magnezone, but even something like a Sun Garchomp with Fire Fang and SD, then, once Bronzong's out of the picture, then, everything else is getting ripped apart. Same exact deal for Zael's team here. It's... it threatens a lot. It's going to get opportunities. Again, a little tough to get in the game, but I wanted to highlight Garchomp's Thunder immunity, which is huge, absolutely enormous, because Thunder is such an irritating move in Ubers because even if you resist it, then there's that obnoxious para chance, and that's annoying even on slow Pokemon. Like, if your Bronzong gets paralyzed by Thunder, that's still obnoxious. So, to be completely immune to the move... because if the opposing Pokemon is choiced, well, if it's Scarfed, then it'll be faster, but it'll be locked into Thunder, so you will force it out anyway. And if it's not choiced, then you are probably, like if it's a Lustrous Palkia or something, then, or a Dialga, a more obvious example, then it's going to be something you naturally outspeed, and most Pokemon in Ubers are instantly threatened by Garchomp. Even without a Scarf. I mean, Scarf really helps it for those three I keep mentioning. The Lotties, the Darkrai's, the Mewtwo's, occasional Skyman, Deoxys Attack. Those are just more of the same thing. It's the same basic idea. So, I just got distracted by the presence of Lugia, because Pokemon 2000 is just so good. Anyway, so, most Pokemon are not as fast as Lotties and up. Most Pokemon are slower, and what's great about Chomp, as we've mentioned, is that it will threaten those Pokemon unboosted, without without the need of a Scarf. So it'll be able to switch moves. Now, Cole's team is actually more well guarded than most against Garchomp because it doesn't have just have Rain Bronzong, but it has Lugia, and Lugia is, and I guess Sun Cresselia are the truest Chomp counters, but Lugia is better because it's faster, whereas Cresselia can be overwhelmed by boosted outrages, and its Ice Beam is no, its Ice Beam is I think the same. Maybe no, I think it's a little weaker, but not by too much. So yeah, Lugia is the best one, but of course Lugia has many problems that are easily exploitable by several common Garchomp partners. I mean, it's not even unreasonable support half the time because it's Stealth Rock weak, and Garchomp is Stealth Rock resistant, so if you just want to double switch on it, then yeah, it's going to drop pretty quickly. Like you lure in the Lugia, you get Latios in, free rocks hit, then it's going to take more rocks before it switches in, and thanks to Lugia's immense bulk and even and higher speed, then yeah, it's still going to do a good job, but it's nothing insurmountable with just rocks. And then we consider the fact that Chomp is often used on sand teams which have Tyranitar, and Choice Band Tyranitar is kind of underused, but any Tyranitar is going to hinder Lugia even more because it cancels out Lugia's ability to even get leftovers passively, which it usually counts on in Sun or Rain. So, yeah, it's not that hard to take down Lugia with common Chomp partners, or just, almost no support at all. Or something like a Groudon luring Lugia in and T-waving it, and suddenly SD Chomp just tears it open. Because Chomp is also bulky enough to where it can take weak Ice Beams like that from full health, even without Yachi or anything. So, yeah, Cole's team is well guarded against Chomp, but even it is not completely immune. Now, I realize that's kind of a high bar to set, like, oh, yeah, well, no team is completely foolproof against Kyogre or, Dialga or something. Yes, it's very true. But I wanted to, and this is not a completely unique Ubers trait, the fact that Chomp, even on a team that is potentially so well guarded against it, I mean, here's an easy piece of support for you. Chomp, T-Wave SD Groudon, rips through Bronzong and T-Waves Lugia, and then SD Chomp is ready to rip through this entire team as well. So, obviously, you also have to be able to execute. This team is not automatically going to fold. There's T-Spikes and things like that to be made in the team-building decisions. But you get the idea. Even with this team that is on paper so well guarded against it, Chomp can very easily get out of hand. And I believe that what is unique about it is not just the ability to do that, because yes, you could also say that about, what's it called? And most Ubers like Kyogre or Dialga or whatever, but what makes Garchomp so good at it is that it is able to do so with its unique traits of outrunning all the 90s, outrunning the 95 Rayquaza and the 100 Palkia that are already considered fast for outrunning the 90s, and having that incredible stab combination. I mean, having 2 stabs to spam, that is really wonderful. Because with most of these Ubers, then, I mean, yeah, Latios has 2 types, but it's not running Luster Purge. It's not running Psychic Stab. It's, Darkrai is one. Mewtwo usually doesn't even run Stab. So, it's nice for its moves to become spammable. Like, something like Scizor switching in to take a strong Outrage isn't necessarily the end of the world. Like, Scizor pivoting into Mewtwo Ice Beam, that's one thing, because it's not Stab. But Scizor pivoting into a Stab Outrage from Chomp, that's going to hurt a lot more. It's so much easier to break down teams when you're not just focusing on using coverage. And, Garchomp Stabs are so good that it, tends to not even need the coverage. So, we go on to another thing. Oh, there's a Chomp there. Oh, it died. Did it die to Draco? Yeah, that's a shame. This is not helping my point. Oh, it was switched into Draco, I think. Yeah, okay, that's not the best display Garchomp's ever had, but that's not exactly Garchomp's fault. I mean, unless not being able to take a Latios Draco Meteor is the ultimate signifier of viability. So, but yeah, let's look at the teams again, because that's what we're here for. So, yep, Heatran. By the way, this is why I preach Lum on Garchomp so much on, like, 3-attack SD sets. We'll get to that again. but being able to shrug off status, toxic, lava plume burns, it's so toxic spikes, random body slam Jirachis, because Spadef Jirachi has started running B Slam. I really like it, not just for Chomp and Groudon, but also for something like Taunt Mewtwo. So yeah, being able to shrug off all that status is just wonderful. So again, let's look at the teams. Same thing. Chill Shadow's team not able to switch into Groudon's Dragon Stab safely at all, and same with Steel's team. Then both have their fast options, but they're also really they're trying to advertise super fast internet for me. But yeah, that's the idea, and it applies here again. Lugia, super not the most. The Lugia there was really unexpected, but. Yeah, I guess CM Lugia. And I should also mention that not only is Lugia vulnerable to common Chomp partners and, easy tactics, then it's also on the decline as a whole. And I realize the presence of 2 Lugias in a couple of games is not exactly helping prove my point here, so I promise, small sample size. But look at the viability rankings video and, go to the part where I talk about Lugia, and it will be illuminated. But in short, Lugia's Stealth Rock weakness and lack of offensive presence against the omnipresent Dialga, even on offensive teams, not to mention its complete worthlessness against spiking balance, makes it hard to fit on teams. In fact, I think in this video that I was completely baffled to see it on Chill Shadow's team. Not that it's a bad Pokemon, far from it, but it's Bronzong and Skarmory are more commonly going to be sitting in Garchomp's way than Lugia is. So, yeah, and not to mention it's still vulnerable and all that. So yeah, there was a T-Wave. See, like, if this, see, look at that. The Lugia's even parried. So if this Lugia got parried and then the Garchomp was unleashed, actually it's probably Scarf on that team because it needs speed. But it's just another example. Look at how badly Garchomp rips up even this team with the faster option and the too physically bulky and the perfect counter, and maybe a Scarf Dialga. But it's still going to be so much of a threat just because its stabs are so hard to switch into, and it's going to find opportunities because it comes in on Heatran. This team's actually more well prepared against it because it's hard to come in. But even Scarf Dialga, I mean, that's gonna want to use Thunders and Fire Blast, so you find a way in with Chomp and it's going to threaten. So yeah. Again, with Rocks up, its Dragon Stab is very spammable on such a team. And it's got so many sets and all that. So yeah, moving on. I keep full screening. I apologize. My mouse is, or my trackpad, clickpad, whatever, is not the greatest. Good lord, I have a lot of ads on this. So we're going to go to the teams I have in this video on the screen. So look, even the offensive ones. 821, yeah, that doesn't like Chomp at all. In fact, it's my most feared Pokemon. 826, yep, that's scared of Chomp, but it also has its own Chomp. Oh, convenient flight tickets all over Europe. That's great. If anyone wants to buy me some so I can go hang out on vacation, all expenses. Yeah, 858, that's got a lot of tools against Chomp, but it's still really scary. In fact, I faced a Chomp in the game that I used it in, if you want to go see it, the 7 UPL battles, and it was that's actually a great example, the battle against Soulwind. His Chomp was the single scariest thing against that team. 891, that's also terrified of most Chomps. 911, that's also, yeah, it wants to call 911 against Chomp. 958, same deal. 989, again, own Chomp. Oh, 911 has its own Chomp as well. And yeah, so yeah, I used a lot of Chomps because, and 891 has it as well, because Chomp is really good. And yeah, so threatened hardcore. Opponents' teams threatened hardcore. We'll get to that. Okay, the ads are over. So High Lord's team, great team, and like all these, I like all these teams that are being used in the video. By the way, they're high-level teams built and used by high-level players. But again, Chomp is still threatening, and I mean that's the nature of Ubers. But again, Chomp's unique qualities are among these, like, because when the slug, like, put it this way, when Kyogre and Dialga and Groudon are just slugging it out, then yeah, it's a lot harder to be overwhelmed by the uncounterableness of them all because they're all like in the same speed tier and they eventually get overwhelmed. And Chomp's speed is and dual stabs. I mean, even Kyogre just has one stab. Is really what lets it stand out. You know, those dual stabs, those excellent dual stabs, let it hit so many things super effectively. So that's what really lets Chomp. It threatens Okos like very. It's great in threatening Okos. You know, Latios has the sheer power of Draco, and Kyogre, of course, has its rain-boosted assaults, but Garchomp is hitting most of the tier super effectively, and the few Pokemon in the tier that aren't hit super effectively, like your Darkrai's and Mewtwo's, then those are still getting slugged because they are not super physically defensive. So, yeah, again, Hylord's team and Solwin's team, you know, vulnerable to Chomp. I mean, so is everything, of course, but you get the idea. So, then... Cole's team, again, Rain Zong, we've already gone over that. This one's at least really aggressive. And M-Dragon's team, also vulnerable. So, again, I just want to show how, on paper, obviously you're not going to automatically lose every game to a Chomp. But I do think that it's so threatening, and yeah, it's kind of hard to justify. It's not, but then again, people also use offensive Mewtwo and Darkrai, and those don't exactly have concrete defensive utility either. And if anything, Garchomp switches in more easily and lasts more easily against common offensive tactics and counterattacks because, again, Stealth Rock resistance, Thunder immunity, and resilience against common priority. So, yeah, these teams are still vulnerable and still. I mean, obviously they have outs against them, many good ones, but still, crazy good. So, yeah, vulnerable, and then we go to the last one, Solwin versus Chill Shadow. Again, another Rain Zong team with Lugia. Good lord, there are way too many Lugias in this game. That is not reflective of its viability. I guess people were really just going for some anti-offense stuff, because Lugia is great against all-out offense, which has been creeping into the limelight, you know, trying to overwhelm balance stuff, so I get that. But, yeah, again, still vulnerable, because if the team is mostly slow, and most teams are going to be... And here's why teams are going to be slower than Chomp. You know, what are your options for outspeeding Chomp? You know, naturally, there are only a couple. They're not switching in either. And you are inherently going to fill your team with Pokemon slower and destroyed by Chomp if you're using common Ubers, if you're using the best Pokemon of the tier, your Dialgas, your Giratina Origins, you know, Ogre, Groudon, all those guys. Palkia, Ray, even the ones already considered fast. Palk is already considered fast, and Chomp gets the jump on that. So, yeah, and, you know, look at all these Chomp. And then, besides that, you have the naturally faster Pokes, and the Scarfers, which of course are exploitable, and still don't want to switch in. No Scarfer switches into Garchomp, so that helps it out even more. And the Swift Swimmers, who are only circumstantially faster than Chomp. So, they're... it's... So, like, a Sun Chomp is made even more threatening by those. So, alright, the actual battle, we're just going to skim through these, and I'm going to take one of my patented bathroom breaks. I made my last video, which was, the Protect Ho-Oh video. I didn't take a bathroom break in that one. I was not as well hydrated as I would like to be most of the time. So yeah, we already know my team is vulnerable, and is Chill Shadows vulnerable? Yup. I mean, Bronzong is all that stands between those 5 other Pokemon and just... Okay, no, I'm not being fair. There's also Garchomp. But... Or Groudon, sorry. And... But it's... You see how threatening it is. So now we're going to skip ahead. My biggest regret in the game against Tomahawk was not using my Garchomp well. Oh my god. Every time I try to click out of the ad, then I full screen. I hope it's not messing the video up. It shouldn't. That would not make sense. But... yeah, my biggest regret in this game is wasting my Garchomp, because look at how threatening it is to Tomahawk's team. You know, it's he had to pivot in Ho-Oh into a +2 Chomp and, you know, pretty much sacrifice it just to get rid of it safely. So, and you know, what else was coming in? So, and then the last Pokemon, which was unrevealed, was Kabutops. So yeah, Chomp was terrifying, and I did not make the most use of it, but you see how scary it is. So then the Solwin game, again, refer to this full video if you want to see the whole thing. But yeah, his Scarf Chomp was absolutely terrifying in this one. Ridiculously so. And it came down to, you know, my Dialga just barely... I won't spoil it for those who haven't seen it, but yeah, the Scarf Chomp is vicious unlike anything else. I mean, that being able to outrun the other Scarfers, and when we go through the sets, then we will delve into why why its Scarf set is so nasty. I mean, if you're following along so far, you probably get the idea. Oh, well, it's really fast and it hits things super effectively, so I guess it outspeeds all the other Scarfers and hits them super effectively, and rips through neutral targets like Darkrai that it can now outspeed. Yeah, that's the gist. So that saved me time on having to explain it later on, so that's nice. So yeah, there's this game, and I won't spoil the end, just in case, even though it should be pretty clear at that point. Then there's this game, which, oh yeah, I had Scarf Chomp of my own, and it was a very similar matchup to what I faced before. And I mean, even with the presence of like Rain, Kabutops, or Groudon, so they're good in both weathers, Chomp's still a threat, hard to switch into. So I was really banking on that guy. And so there's this game, Inspirited. His team is solid, also does not care for Garchomp, even with a faster recovering Ice Beam Mewtwo. It's just so hard to do. Take it out. I mean, yeah, he's got options, of course. Every team has options against Chomp. If you build a team that's just outright 6-0'd by Scarf Chomp, then you have a bad team. But it's the fact that it's so threatening in spite of, well, the options, the truest options for countering. You're really soft checking Chomp more than you're truly countering it. And yes, that's true for a lot of Ubers, but it's still hard to keep up with if you really, and this is what the purpose of this video really is. Like, I'm hoping to get people to really reconsider Chomp's existence, and like, because people tend to kind of relegate it to the Scarf role and just like, well, I hope it cleans up at the end of the game. I want people to use more mid-game aggressive Chomps that we'll go over soon and really get the most out of it, because I feel like people are underrating just how insanely threatening it is. Just because, I mean, yeah, Latios and Kyogre and all these guys are impossible to switch into, but Garchomp has 2 stabs which are nearly impossible to switch into safely. And it's so naturally fast, and it takes all the counterattacks, and I know I'm going in circles, but I really have to emphasize how big these are. So yeah, I mean, yeah, on a team like this, then Dialga can Trick Room, and that's a speed option. He's got Groudon and Mewtwo and naturally faster Latios and whatnot. But, oh yeah, I even had a Chomp in this game, and I think it got a couple of kills, maybe just one. But yeah, it switched into Heatran like a beast, and, oh yeah, it took out Groudon. And the faster Latios didn't want to switch in, even once he knew I wasn't choiced, because there's always the threat. Yeah, Chomp switches in, takes that out, and I was holding it back for the late game. Mewtwo doesn't want to come in even with just rocks. So yeah, I was really happy to have Chomp here. This team, again, Chomp, his Void's Chomp here, and this was a great example of a Magnezone team. I think Steel built it. The Magnezone Chomp support, I mean, piling on with other dragons, of course. So this is a great example of what I was talking about at the beginning of the video. And again, his Scarf Chomp was very, very threatening to my offensive team. So I had to like really calc out like the percentages with Darkrai and keep. I had to keep Jirachi and Latios around, not because they're good against Chomp, but because they resist one of its stabs. And playing around it can be really difficult. So yeah, Chomp is dangerous. And again, consult the video for more detail. And, oh god, more ads. Well, that's a good thing for me. So, God, the Driftveil theme is so good. It suddenly makes me want to play Gen 5 Ubers. But, this is what is more important. Anyway, this guy's selling something and that I need, allegedly. Anyway, so I had another Garchomp. Actually, Garchomp I don't think even got revealed in this game. But again, High Lord has a good, solid, dangerous team. But again, this was the synergy here. So, I used it on the other team as well. Groudon, Sun Groudon plus Fire Garchomp means that this Zong is only circumstantially good against my Chomp. It needs to get the rain up and the hazards and the Weather War. And Chomp is both a threat in its own right and helping me win the Weather War overall. And yeah, it's just so terrifying. I mean, look at these Pokemon that it all just rips through. So it's again, Zong staving Chomp off, and yeah. Alright, so now it's bathroom break time, because I'm hydrated. And we will then delve into Garchomp's many sets. I've mentioned them in my other videos, so this is not going to be as extensive, but I still want to be detailed and consider the partners and whatnot. So, BRB. I think it was good timing to take the break during the Drift Veil theme because it is just so good. Whoever came up with that one really just deserves all the everything. Anyway, so classic Chomp set is Choice Scarf. We already went over why it's good. It outruns the other Scarfers, even the fast one, Palkia. I mean, yes, okay, there are the occasional Scarf Darkrai's and even Scarf Mewtwo's, which, very rare. I just wanted to mention it so someone wouldn't say, oh, well, you forgot that Scarf Mewtwo and Skyman technically exist. So, yeah, they technically exist because they outrun Swift Swimmers and they're generally pretty good at late game. But half the reason they're so threatening late game is because they outrun a lot of other Scarfers, and chief among them is Garchomp, and that's a rare quality to outrun Scarf Chomp. You're outrunning Scarf Dialga and Scarf Kyogre and Scarf Palkia and Scarf Jirachi, and that's really good. So you are threatening late game because, again, those great, super effective stabs, and the last move usually doesn't even matter. Sleep Talk is good for Darkrai. That's the most reliable one. Stone Edge is pretty good, actually, because Ho-Oh can be a pain. It's not going to get you very far against that awesome Protecto Ho-Oh, which is, mentioned in my other video, which you should go watch if you haven't. But yeah, Aqua Tail is okay on Rain. Honestly, I like Stealth Rock. I really do. And Stealth Rock Chomp is something that we're going to get to. It's a very underrated option on Chomp. Because, again, this video is less about the Chomps. I mean, yeah, the Scarf Chomp is great, of course. But I want to, people will tend to hold Chomp back to the very end and then just kind of let it loose and be like, all right, well, outrage the Kyogre from 50 and let's see if we can win this. I want people to use mid-game Chomps. I want it getting in the thick of the action right from the beginning and dishing out lots of pain. And Stealth Rock is something else it can do that it usually doesn't. Almost never, in fact. So, yeah, you can do that. Oh, Toxic is actually pretty good on it, because if they have Lugia and they think they're super safe against your Chomp, then you just Toxic them and they are ruined. Generally, it's nice for Groudon too, so actually, yeah, I do like Toxic. Yeah, Scarf Fire moves, even on Sun, are just generally not worth it. So Sleep Talk or Toxic are my recommended ones. So that's Scarf. As we know how it works, it's fast, stabs, etc. Another nice inherent trait Garchomp has, by the way, that many other Scarfers don't, is that, or fast pokes in general, it's faster than Lucario, and it has despite not having an E-Speed resistance, it has the bulk to naturally withstand a boosted extreme speed. Now, obviously, you don't want to chuck it in with 3 layers of spikes and just be like, all right, it's fine. But it can take 1, and that's really, really big. So that's Chomp. That's Scarf. Is the music still playing? Oh, yes, keep playing. So, yeah, that's Scarf. As for partners, I will say one of the few things about Garchomp is that its attack stat is a little lower than, its Ubers compatriots. So you do, for neutral hits against something like Kyogre, yeah, you're still really hitting them hard, but you really want to be pushing it as much as possible. Now, it depends. I would say that the most successful route is to naturally do spikes, but just for those neutral hits, like even something against a healthy Darkrai or Mewtwo. In fact, the game I had against Void, perfect example. Darkrai was out of range of EQ, and locking into Outrage would have resulted in Chomp itself getting revenge killed in exchange. So the spikes really go a really long way in finishing off Rai and Mewtwo, and helping you push, and not just other physically frail, relatively, things like Kyogre, but helping you push through Groudon so your sweep is even cleaner. So spikes is one thing, and the other approach, like the Team Steel made that Void used, is Magnezone plus a lot of other Dragon stuff. Because at that point, then when you're just piling on the Dracos with Lottie and Dialga and Giratina, then at that point the other team is going to be so bludgeoned that Chomp is just there to click the buttons and finish the deal at the very end. So you don't really need that extra support, because it's going to be, at that point, it's going to be less of a gradual wearing down of the opponent, and more of a, I just need the fast option for the very end. So that's how that works. Of course, Spikes is the more automatic option. And with Magnezone, you are removing the Zong and the Skarm that are not going to care about your 60 million layers of Spikes. So, with Scarf Chomp, have a plan for the Zong and Skarm, and other than that, just weaken the opposing team. Calc, you have to make sure that you don't Dragon Claw 30% Kyogre and have it come up short because it had physical defense you didn't calc and realize it had. So, stuff like that. So, yeah, Scarf Chomp, pretty simple, pretty awesome. The other really common Chomp set is Sub Salic, and this is really nice alongside Magnezone in particular. In fact, I think this is a much better Magnezone partner than Scarf. Whether you're in Dragon Claw or Outrage is kind of up to you. The Dragon Claw Outrage dilemma also kind of shines, specifically against Giratina O, when Chomp is unboosted, because you need to Outrage to KO Giratina O unboosted, but that obviously locks you into Outrage. You don't want to be doing that. And Dragon Claw, it does not come close, because Tino is really bulky. But in general, it's safer to go with Dragon Claw so you don't get revenge killed by dumb stuff you shouldn't, like Jirachi. But yeah, Salic Chomp is pretty simple, pretty great, because you will just sub down a couple times, and then you have your speed boost. So you have the speed of Scarf Chomp, and then you also have the wall-breaking power of SD Chomp. So, and I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can SD in front of Groudon and let it hit you, and then you get your Salic, so you don't have to sub down to Salic first against it. You can play like a regular SD Chomp, which we're going to see soon is very dangerous. Then you don't necessarily need to sub down to the Salic, but yeah, a really dangerous Pokemon, really commonly used on teams with a T-Tar and Magnezone, but just Magnezone is getting the job done. Magnezone isn't even required. I mean, it's not like Skarm and Zong are that, not just that common, but even that immovable. You want to have some moves for them. Like, you might want to chuck some fire coverage on your Groudon if you got it, but this set is also, it's like when you have another Scarfer or another speed option, if you're running, like Swift Swimmers or something, then yeah, Salic Chomp is pretty awesome. Something else worth mentioning is Endure over Sub. That is a really underrated option, because that way, when you are facing off against Scarf Dialga one-on-one, then you just Endure, you take the hit with 1%, and then you just have your Salic boost, and then you could potentially sweep like a Scarf Chomp. A Scarf Chomp that is not locked into one move, so they can't, lock you into EQ and then go to Latios or something. So, the thing about Salic Chomp is that you also want to be, you don't want to be too cavalier with subbing down to low HP, because, as we've mentioned a gajillion times, one of the cool things about Chomp is that it is not super vulnerable to priority, Shadow Sneak, Bullet Punch, E-Speed. But when you start subbing down, that's when you start becoming vulnerable. So, generally good to preserve Chomp's health, and don't start subbing just because you have a free turn. Sub once you know you have a good chance of getting something out of the boost. So, that's Salic Chomp, pretty simple. And then classic SD Chomp, I've talked to my Fire Fang. There are a lot of options here, honestly. So I talked about some SD 3-attack Chomps in some other videos. But so you can refer to my other DPP Ubers stuff. There's a lot on the channel if you just, If you search DPP Ubers on YouTube, I'm pretty sure like most of my videos are the stuff that's going to come up first, just because I am obsessive. But yeah, so SD3 attacks makes it really hard to wall with balancy Scarm stuff. Fortress isn't getting free turns on you ever. If you're running a rain team, you can just run Aqua Tail. Or you can run 2 Dragon Stabs, and I really, really like this. Dragon Claw Outrage this way, you can wall break when you need to, if you have no other choice, and you can obviously just Dragon Claw when you don't want to lock yourself in, which is most times. And yeah, it's just a great option in general. And then there's also the option of Stealth Rock. So Rock's SD is really cool, and we'll get to Rock's Chomp in a second. But yeah, the SD3 attacks, also fairly self-explanatory. Just slap on extra coverage. You're not going to have that speed option anymore, so you can't like sub, and then Latios can't revenge kill you, and you outspeed and you sweep their whole team. That's not really what this is about, and that's what your teammates are for. So we already mentioned the teammates of Salic Chomp. They're pretty similar to Scarf. When that you really like Magnezone, and you really need anti-Zong and Scarm help. Salic Chomp doesn't need spikes as much for the neutral stuff like Groudon and Kyogre. I mean, it definitely helps, but since you're SDing, you don't need to get that extra 3% on Kyogre, stuff like that. So as badly anyway, it's not gonna say no. So yeah, so this takes a little bit of a different approach, because this is not trying to clean up the opponent's team in the late game like Scarf and Salic are. This is more trying to rip holes in walls. Now, of course, the nice thing about Chomp is that, as we've said already, its huge speed means that it is naturally threatening to so many significant portions of even offensive teams. So you're outrunning the Ogres and the Giratinas and Dialgas and whatnot, so you're going to be threatening them. But you are usually not going to be able to seal the deal, because they are going to have a faster Pokemon, usually a Scarfer. So the teammate for SD3 Attacks Chomp is going to be something that can really exploit the fact that they're going to revenge kill you. And my favorite example personally is SD Lucario, because this gives you a second Swords Dancer, and here's how it works. Number 1, Chomp rips through the bulky stuff. I mean, Lucario does that too, but Chomp softens the bulky stuff up first. And what Lucario does is that once it SDs, thanks to E-Speed, it is still cleaning up the faster teams without giving up coverage. I guess technically you could... No, that's stupid. No. You clean up the faster teams and you're still wall breaking against them. But with Lucario, then it's also got a lower attack stat, so it wants the opposing team softened up. So SD Chomp softens the opposing team up first, weakens that Groudon. That's really crucial. And it will put the opposing, especially with spikes, because I do think Lucario needs spikes, but Lucario is getting its own video, so... you weaken the opposing team with spikes and SD Chomp and all that fun stuff, and then Lucario gets its SD, and then its E-Speed is cleaning up really, really easily. So you have a pair of Swords Dancers that are ripping through balance and naturally good against offense, because Lucario has the E-Speed for the faster Pokemon, and Garchomp is in itself naturally a faster Pokemon than so much of the tier, so it's threatening so many common Pokemon like Dialga and Giratina with its stabs. So you're just ripping holes in teams just by attacking, and the other part is not just, 2 Swords Dancers and they're both fast and stuff. The really great part about this pairing is that they have great type synergy, and what I mean by that is when you outrun and revenge kill a Garchomp with a Scarfer, this relates to 2 things. 1, it's going to come from a Scarfer. 2, it's going to come from a faster Pokemon. So if it's a faster Pokemon revenge killing Darkrai like a Mewtwo, then yeah, Lucario's not going to be setting up on that unless it's Scarf Mewtwo. But if it's Scarf Mewtwo, then it applies to one of the Scarfers, and when you revenge kill Garchomp with a super effective move that's choiced, then Lucario is going to come in and resist that move and get a free Swords Dance. And with a non-choice Pokemon this applies to is Latios, because if Latios Draco's Chomp, then that is free Lucario setup. Now, take that with a grain of salt. A lot of Latios run anti-setup moves, like Memento or Roar, specifically because things like to set up on -2 Latios. But most of the time, if like a Scarf Spatial Rend from or a Scarf Ice Beam from Kyogre takes Chomp out, and remember that's after a KO because they're certainly not switching into Chomp, so Chomp will get a KO, and then those choice Pokemon will come in and maybe KO Chomp if you're ready to sacrifice it. And if they do KO Chomp with that choice move, then Lucario is going to come in and grab that SD, and it's against a weakened team, it's going to be terrifying. So I really, really love the combination of SD Chomp and SD Lucario, and I think they pair just wonderfully. And yeah, I would generally prefer Fire Fang. Like the team in the video against High Lord, that had that combination. I made a lot of teams with that combination. The Cynthia combo, I called it. So, yeah, those two are really just wonderful together, and I recommend their use. So that's Lucario was just an example that I talked about way too much because I got carried away because I love that combo. But that's the general idea, in that you want to take advantage of the fact that they're going to revenge kill Garchomp with something faster, and you want to turn the tables on them afterwards. Trick Room Dialga, that would be a really great combination because it's like Lucario. It wants the opposing team softened before it sets up. So 3 attacks Chomp is doing that because you're not walling it. And then once they come in with the revenge kill, even if they surf with Kyogre or something, then Dialga will set up the Trick Room and then rip through that weakened team easily. So that's the general idea. And of course, you are not obligated to leave Garchomp in to get revenge kill. That's only when you're ready to set up with something after. You put the opponent in catch-22. You KO Garchomp, you let my threat set up. And of course, most of the time, Chomp should be able to switch into Latios or whatever. It enjoys Jirachi pairings. I mean, Jirachi Garchomp pairing is also wonderful because Jirachi will U-turn out of something annoying like a Heatran, and then Garchomp comes back in. So it's just a match made in heaven. So as for items on SD Chomp, there's so many things it can do. It can. I talked about Life Orb in an underrated sets video. Lefties is probably okay. Lum, I already stressed in this video and others. I also think that Draco Plate is good, especially if you're running dual Dragon move. That one is really good. Dual Dragon move, it really likes the Draco Plate just for full wall breaking capability. And it's also nice just in general, just to give your Dragon Claw a little more oomph, because the Giratina O is usually not going to expect it. So you could even do Expert Belt. I would actually no, that one might be, well, yeah, because you're not Dragon moving if you're running dual Dragon move, then I would Draco Plate. Otherwise, Expert Belt is probably better, so your Earthquake hits Dialga harder. That one's really big. And of course, it gives you stronger Fire Fangs against Zongs and Skarms. So yeah, that one's good. Habin is good because it lets you turn the tables on Scarf Chomp, actually, opposing Scarf Chomp. You need a lot of Spadef against Scarf Dialga's Draco, so I really don't like it. I don't like taking out of Chomp's attack, but I mean, it's something. Yachi is okay, but yeah, lots and lots of options. I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm overlooking. You could, but yeah, that's just, I'm just scrolling just to see if there's anything. Yeah, you could definitely make something else work. Yeah, Yachi might have something. But yeah, for the most part, its options are flexible. It could even do lefties. So another set I mentioned in an underrated sets video that I want to stress again is Choice Band. And that I want to specify again here because, again, we mentioned how scary those stabs are. And yes, not being able to switch between them can be sometimes annoying. But sometimes you really need that extra power when you're trying to finish off that offensive Kyogre or whatever. And giving Chomp a band, the immediate power it has, the immediate power on a Pokemon with these stabs and this speed is, that's game breaking. Now you are free to Dragon Claw Giratina O to your heart's desire. And if Groudon wants to come in, that Dragon Claw is going to do a surprising amount of damage. And if you outrage, then they're just getting melted. Dialga's not eating this Earthquake from full health. It is absolutely vicious and really deserves more use. And Life Orb, it's kind of the same. I don't like it. The power is nice. You're still going to be shrugging off priority pretty well, but it's harder to use. So it's a give and take. But I do really like Choice Band because, I mean, we saw how tough its stabs are just... we saw how tough it is to switch into those stabs with all those teams we went over. But again, Groudon and, Kyogre being healthy. And you take away that whole, Garchomp's not KOing too much from high health without outraging thing anymore. Because now, you can threaten out Dialga, or you can threaten to KO Dialga at full health way more easily. You have the same thing against Giratina. Oh, you really just destroy Kyogre. Groudon doesn't want to switch in anymore. So, yeah, vicious Pokemon. You could even run Stone Edge if you really wanted to rip through Lugia or something. But it's probably better to just run Fire Fang or even Toxic. So, yeah, Choice Band, I went over it in the other video, so refer to that again. But, yeah, Band Chomp is... Yeah, it's... I kind of want to compare it to Scarf Chomp, not in that it's, not just because it's choiced, but in that the objective is to really rip through as much as possible instantly. So with Scarf Chomp, then you want to outrun that Darkrai and that Lottie Twin and just clean through the opponent's remains. With Choice Band, with the SD sets, they're great, but they need a turn to become as threatening as they are. Well, I take that back. Partially, because again, as we've been stressing this entire video, Garchomp's stabs make it instantly threatening against so much of the metagame because they're so hard to resist and super effective and whatnot. But without the boost of some kind, then you are not as instantly threatening to the neutral targets. Yes, you are still going to be hitting Kyogre really hard, but you are not dropping the offensive Calm Minder from 60 or something like that. So, you could probably run Sleep Talk on this, by the way, over Fire Fang. I neglected to mention that. And that's another reason... I didn't even mention that's another reason why Lum is so nice on SD, because Darkrai is a pain. So, yeah, that's another thing. But here you are... Again, it's a very instant Pokemon, and now it's less about the outspeeding and winning games at the end, but now it's more about... instantly destroying the opponent's defensive core. And again, if you're playing an offense team, then their defensive core is going to be, just enough to take hits, just enough to dance around the opposing threats. I've got my resist and whatnot. And this really takes a rusty knife to that idea, because it's going to just rip through Groudon, Dialga, Giratina, Kyogre, all those other slower pokes. And it's going to be fast while doing it still, and you can fire off the attacks multiple times. So, I'm trying to not repeat myself as much, but very instant hacksaw to their defensive core, and you don't need no setup, no recoil, biggest power you can get on as soon as it's in. And if there's any Pokemon that loves using a Choice Band, it's the Pokemon with stab like these and speed like this. So yeah, CB Chomp, I'm gonna go in circles, so I'll stop now. But and you can refer to the other video for more detail. But I think I've laid it out here pretty thoroughly. So yeah, CB Chomp is good. Okay, so we also said that we would go through Rock's Chomp. So again, I mean, CB Chomp is something that will get in the thick of it. Mid game. I mean, that's a way to create some free turns, because that's unique for CB Chomp. No other Chomp can do that. Pivot into an offensive Kyogre's Thunder, even if the Kyogre's at high health, and then threaten to KO the Kyogre, just melt it right on the spot, because it doesn't need that turn to SD. And with Scarf, then it's not going to have the power to melt Kyogre from such high health. So Band has a lot of unique opportunities that separate it from other Garchomp sets, and I really hope we see more of it used. Because that power, that instant power combined with its very other unique traits. I'm going in circles, but it's just really, really good. So suddenly you can pivot into Giratina's Shadow Sneak, and the Giratina will be at full health, and you're still destroying it if it stays in, and chunking the switch in really hard. Yeah, so that is entirely unique. Anyway, so this set is not like that, but it is like it in the as far as getting in the thick of the action mid-game goes, because you're going to scare something out and you're going to use that turn to get up rocks. You don't have to say, oh, is the Latios going to come into my EQ, or should I just, Dragon Claw and risk Jirachi coming in, and then I have to run from Scarf Ice Punch? Scarf Ice Punch Jirachi Revenge Killing Garchomp hurts my soul a little sometimes, by the way, and I know Magnezone helps with that, but that is an underrated application of Yachi. Anyway, so you can run that on this set if you like, just like you can run any other item on SGD Chomp on this. But here you basically use the many switches Garchomp affords to get up rocks, and since you have such great dual stabs, then you are still a great offensive threat. Both instantly, because you threaten everything in the tier, and after a boost, because you can run SD and not really miss out on much. I mean, it's great with zone, don't even need it necessarily. But yeah, Rocks SD is really, really underrated, and this is another set I really want to see more of. I guess that's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple Chomp, and we've been talking about SD for Chomp for a while now. But yeah, it doesn't get rough skin in this gen, by the way, if you're wondering why Sandvale. Yeah, and it can be pretty dumb in sand, let me tell you. So, yeah, Rocks SD Chomp, good. And what's nice about it is that it frees up your Dialga or something to run. You know that strategy we just talked about, where you have the SD Chomp and you force them to revenge kill you with their choice poke. Now you can run Trick Room Dialga more easily because you don't have to run Rocks Dialga. That's just something off the top of my head, but that's what Rocks Chomp does. It gets a lot of it's a good rocker because it gets a lot of turns and it threatens a lot of things out, and it also is still a threat. And it lets you, it frees up your rocker elsewhere. So you don't have to put rocks on your Dialga or your Deoxys Speed. You can just lay down a million layers of spikes with Deoxys Speed because you know that Chomp is going to come in and get up rocks after. Being a rocker that has a positive matchup against Dialga is really, really good. So that lets you get a lot of advantages early on. So yeah, this set good. And the final set I want to mention is an Iris creation. So this set is unique. Draco Chomp, now, don't get me wrong, I know DPP Ubers is all about Draco spam, but this is not using Draco Meteor for the power. Well, I mean, it is, but it's not just because Chomp has a Meteor that's impossible to switch into. It's not destroying neutral targets, far from it. And I will say that, not having a very strong EQ is not the most pleasant thing. But this set has a lot of advantages, and if you give it a Life Orb, which I think it should be running most of the time, then it is helped out a lot. So, and this set doesn't, because you're getting in the thick of the action, it should be Stealth Rock, not Swords Dance. So same idea as the other set, you get up your rocks early, and then you're more of an instant threat without needing SD because of your power. So what Draco does is it lets you KO Giratina O from high health without locking into Outrage. And you don't have to run Choice Band either. And what this does, that Choice Band does, in addition to getting up rocks, is that with Fire Blast, Life Orb Fire Blast, you are also toasting Skarm and Zong really, really nicely. So it is a unique set of traits for an offensive rocker. It's kind of like it's like an offensive Rocks Dialga that, number one, lets you run another Dialga set, and number two has a lot better speed. That's big. And number three has lure potential, huge, huge lure potential. I mean, even if the set was more common, then you wouldn't start thinking, oh, well, I expect that Chomp to be Life Orb Draco. It's very hard to get a read on a Chomp set if it's used early in the game. Whereas if you wait, that's another reason to use Garchomp earlier in the game. Because if you wait until late game, Scarf and Salic Chomp are generally held back for later in the game. And then they pop out at the end, and then you know what you're dealing with. Now, most of the time, it's going to be too late if the opponent has set it up correctly. You're not going to say, oh, thank God I know that Chomp is Salic, because it's probably going to sub down and destroy you. But when you have Chomp in early in the game, then you have the element of surprise on your side. The opponent is not going to know what you're running. And that uncertainty makes a great Pokemon like Garchomp even better. So, yeah, with all the plethora of sets we've gone over today, then, yeah. So I realized I didn't start mentioning partners for the other sets after the Rocks SD, but I mean, they're pretty similar. Like CB Chomp is like SD. I mean, you want Pokemon taking advantage of the revenge kill, and this guy fits on offense a lot. I have seen what I do like. I've seen a couple teams, and I've made a couple that after being inspired by it. is that as the Rocks Chomps fit really nicely on semi-stall teams with things like Skarm, because number one, Skarm with Spadef is a great switch to Choice Dracos that are often going to come in Revenge, and Garchomp switches into Choice Thunders really nicely. What makes it really nice though is that, you know, with balanced teams with Skarm tend to be a little on the slow side, so they tend to be scared of things like Lustrous Palkia, who have great coverage and speed and power. But with Chomp, then you have a great offensive option on your rocker, so you are not just going 4 slow Pokemon and then, you know, you try to tack on a Darkrai or something. With this, part of your core is already fast and aggressive, and you're still, you know, going to be a balanced team, so you have a good defensive thing to fall back on, and you have longevity and spikes and all that. But you also have instant offense and speed, and that's really, really valuable. So that's another unique thing Chomp does, lending speed to teams that are otherwise slow, and that really helps them keep up. So, you know, when you have a balanced team that's pretty good, but sometimes it struggles against fast wall breakers, what do? You chuck on a wall breaker that's faster than all the Rays and Palkias. So, yeah. That's SD Chomp, or that's Chomp for you. All right, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover, honestly. I hope this video has given you some ideas on all the things Chomp can do and all the things it can be paired with, because it doesn't just end with the Chomp set you decide. You can then continue to go on and say, all right, well, when Scarf Kyogre comes into Garchomp after I KO something, here's how I'm going to respond. You know, I'm going to set up my Trick Room Dialga, my Calm Mind Latios, or my, you know, whatever. So yeah, you can go Dragon Spam, you can go Balance, you can do a million things with Garchomp. Yeah, that's pretty much everything. And you can fit it on the Balance, you can fit it on Hardcore Hyper Offense, and Dragon Spam, all the good stuff. So that is Chomp in a nutshell. And once again, I hope this video has been helpful and enjoyable for you. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys later.